So where do we start with this one? Actually, I think I want to talk about confidence before we get into a tactical breakdown of the match. Arsenal sometimes looks like the best team in the league by a mile. When Odegaard, Martinelli, Trossard, and Havertz are in form, it feels like Arsenal can't be stopped. And for the last 3 years, we've seen this on a consistent basis. But then, during the same matches in which we look so good, we go into a shell, we let teams crawl back in, and we can't deal with the pressure well at all. And today's game was exactly that. When we went up 2-0, I thought the game was over, 3 points, we keep the pressure on Liverpool, and instead, we slow down, our pressure gets lazy, and we just bottle it. Take a look at this clip. A counter-attack, and the ball gets to our fastest player. Martinelli running at a defender, basically in a 1v1. And he somehow forgets how to dribble, and he actually starts running away from the goal. The lack of confidence that Martinelli has right now is alarming. And that is the difference between Arsenal and teams like Liverpool and City when they are in form. The confidence from Salah and Haaland to go at players and punish them on counterattacks is why they're so good. And when Arsenal aren't at their best, these are the moments that punish us at the end of the season. Fortunately for Arsenal, they did manage to score off open play and not just on set pieces. And there was also a key theme and an area that Arsenal exploited today that I thought was really smart. But before we get into that, I want to show you that teams are quickly figuring out how to defend set pieces against Arsenal. And also, I think rules will be changing soon because of the amount of contact we're starting to see. Take a look at Yuri Tielemans. Clearly his job to prevent Havertz from setting the screen on Martinez, and he's almost carrying him away. But I'm not going to complain that this is a foul because I've also seen how much contact that we put on keepers when we score. I just think it's starting to get really hard to determine what is a foul and what isn't inside the box. But back to how Arsenal found some success against Villa, it all had to do with the corners of the box. Arteta clearly studied Villa and knew that if we could get players and crosses into these areas specifically, we could create a lot of chances. Arsenal started putting crosses in, but not into the central areas. Instead, they would go to the far side and corner of the box with the hopes that a player would be free since Villa defended more centrally. And part of finding these spaces required players to make runs in there as well, with a lot of underlapping runs. We typically only talk about overlapping runs, but if you look at Arsenal's player positioning in the attacking third, they use as much width as they can, which stretches out Villa's back line when they apply pressure and opens up spaces once again in the corner of a box for a player to run into. Then the moment it gets there, as long as players are in the box, Arsenal have a good chance of scoring. And I think had Arsenal finished some of these, it could have been maybe a little out of reach for Villa to come back. But whenever you're in the final third and you have a lot of players committed forward, especially so far out wide as well, you give up a lot of space for the counterattacks. And that's exactly what Villa was trying to do. They would win the ball and try to find Ollie Watkins on the counter. I was worried that with Timber stepping in for Saliba, our back line may not be as organized, but Villa just couldn't get enough numbers up to help Watkins. And if you're going to counter, it has to happen with intensity and a lot of support. Off the ball, Arsenal typically did a good job of pressing. They start central so that teams can't play through them, and then when the ball eventually goes wide, they all shift over and trap them in the corner. It's quite simple, but it requires every player to be in the right space because a team as good as Villa will be able to find the open player if Arsenal aren't marking tight enough. And I want to give credit to Arsenal for doing this the majority of the game. Applying a high press takes a lot of fitness, and it's a big risk if you don't have better players than the other team. But when it's done properly and every player is on the same page, the best that the opposition can do is hit a long ball and hope to recover the second ball out of the air. And if it works how it's supposed to, you'll catch the other team with less numbers than the press, and you'll eventually have opportunities to score. Even in this one, while it didn't generate a direct chance, it pressured Villa to giving up a corner kick, which for Arsenal we know is a direct chance. The other part of Arsenal's game that I find positive is when they can find Havertz playing in that false nine. One of the criticisms that he's faced is that he's not a forward, but he's not a midfielder either. So people aren't really sure where he belongs. I still am not sure we have found his best position, but I do think him operating in those half spaces and getting away from the center backs is a good way to link up play. And after a lot of criticism for recent performances, I think this was a good game for him. Good link-up play as the false nine, and then getting into good areas in the box, which led him to scoring the second goal of the game. And you see in the build-up to the play, another really good tactic of Mikel Arteta is the inverted fullback. It's so important for Arteta that whenever the center backs get the ball, as long as there is established possession, Lewis Skelly tucks in, allowing more space for Trossard on the wing so that he can go in 1v1 and eventually be able to cross the ball into dangerous areas. Without the fullback playing inverted, it typically takes away the space from the wide players to be able to get the ball in really good passing lanes. When you guys are watching games in the future, keep an eye out on the inverted fullbacks, as you can see how easy it makes it for Arsenal and other teams that use the inverted fullback to get the ball higher up the field. But even after the goal, the performance was overshadowed by the 2-goal lead that Arsenal gave up. And here's what I really want you guys to get out of these tactical analysis videos. Football is a simple sport. You can spend days, weeks, months preparing your style of play, attacking and defensive tactics. You can get the whiteboard out and move magnets around to show players where they need to go, but it all goes out the window if the players decide not to do it when it comes to game time. Ball goes out to Lucas Digne, lazy pressure from Thomas Partey, and bad marking from Mikel Merino. Not to take away from Villa because it was a great ball and finish, but it's the little details of who wants it more. And Yuri Tielemans wanted it more than Merino, Digne wanted it more than Thomas Partey. And I've said this multiple times over the last 3 years. Thomas Partey always ends up making a mistake tactically, and his marking in the box for the second goal was the reason that Aston Villa scored. Once again, it starts with bad pressure from Trossard, but Partey completely loses his mark, and of course, Ollie Watkins is never going to miss from there. Anytime the game is close or at stake, I feel like Thomas Partey has caused some mistakes that lead me to believe he's not the right player to have in the team. At least not if Arsenal want to win a Premier League trophy. So overall, a good game from Arsenal when you look at the big picture and the ideas that they had to hurt Villa, but it's also another game that a lack of focus and awareness in the last 30 minutes of the game cost us a win. It's going to be tough climbing back from a possible 9-point gap once Liverpool plays their match in hand, so if I was Arteta, I'd really start thinking about the player selection. I know there's a lot of injuries, but the problems have been the same for a long time. Arsenal lacks the killer instinct to finish games off, and until that becomes a habit, there's no chance that we win the Premier League. Subscribe if you like this analysis, and check out all the other videos I've done recently breaking down big games, and also let me know specifically if there's any games you want me to break down for you coming up. We'll catch you guys in the next one.